Hello, today we are sitting down with Elisa Au, who will be representing Team USA at the Paris Olympic qualifier in the minus 61 kilogram division for her chance to compete at the Tokyo Olympic Games this coming summer. Going into 2021, Elisa is no stranger to the international stage, and her credentials are nothing to hold a candle to. In 2002, Elisa took home a gold medal at the WKF World Championships, only to be topped by taking home 2 world champion titles in 2004, making her the first athlete to double gold in individual divisions at a world championships. Not to mention, Elisa is also a 9-time USA Open gold medalist, 18-time USA national champion, and 8-time PKF medalist. Welcome, Elisa. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Getting started, I thought we could take a trip down memory lane and start off by you sharing how you got started with karate.
Yeah, thanks. So I started karate at the age of 5. I don't exactly recall what happened, but my parents told me that I came home one day with a flyer to start karate at the local YMCA, which was right across the street from our house. And then I was really excited about it. So I do remember my first day of class, though. I remember walking in there, being really overwhelmed with like the uniforms and like what everyone was doing. And I was obviously on the young side as well. And then my first instructor, Sensei Glenn West, was the one who I met first. And I remember him helping me into my gi and getting me started from there. And that location ended up being my training area or my dojo for many years after that.
Have you always been a kumite athlete? How did that decision come about that you would focus on kumite?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved kumite, but coming up in the dojo we came up in, we were required to do both in competition, in addition to even weapons competition. So I did all of that up until I was 18. I actually really like kata. I competed in it well into my 20s. I like it. I'm just not really fit for it. I've always had a little bit more of that edge and that skill set in kumite. Been more successful in kumite, and in the end, decided that it was best for me to focus on that. I did kata well into my 20s. I even got a bronze at the Pan American Championships one year. So yeah.
Swinging back around, I want to talk about your competition history, specifically at an elite international level.
Mhm.
Do you remember back in 2002, 2004, when you took home those incredible titles of world champion? And how did that feel?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to forget that, even though it's so long ago. It's almost 2 decades ago. Yeah, I will never forget the feeling of winning the world championships. Really had I had always dreamed of being a world champion. A lot of athletes do dream of winning this title. I didn't know that it would come so quickly. I thought it would take me many chances to like work my way up and figure it out. However, 2002 was the first time I competed at a senior world championships in the individual competition, and I was ready. Like I had prepared a lot, and I think I just surprised the competition because they hadn't seen me around in the scene. I had competed in very few senior competitions prior to that. So I think it all came down to really focused, determined, intentional preparation. And then not to mention just as a kid, as a junior athlete, just being really serious about it. It wasn't just an activity or an extracurricular for me. I was pretty determined from about 12 or 13 years old that this is what I wanted to do.
After you achieved such a high, which being a world champion is what athletes dream of becoming, like you said, what were your goals that you set for yourself after achieving that?
Yeah, so I mean, in 2000, I believe at the Munich World Championships, there was this whole like uh, word around. Like I think even in the opening ceremonies, everyone was wearing these signs that said "Karate in the Olympics?" question mark. So of course, I had always crossed my fingers that karate would become an Olympic sport in my lifetime, or in my as I was an athlete. So I held on to that, knowing that it was a very, very, very slight possibility. And in the meantime, I told myself, well, okay, you won a world championship. Why not win multiple? Like, if you can't go to the Olympics, then at least be the very best at your sport. Be be one of the best ever. I mean, being a world championship, be a world champion is tough enough, but being like the best is even more special, and it's something I was determined to do. So that's what kept driving me past 2002 to keep achieving.
As a competitor who has vast experience with competitions, we wanted to ask, how do you leave competitions when you don't exactly get what you want out of them? Do you leave with a positive attitude or
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to say you have to learn from your losses. It's so much easier to say than to actually do. It's hard to control those emotions. I allow myself to have those emotions. I try my best to keep them in private, although I will admit that sometimes it hasn't been so private. But I try to keep those, like, feelings of sadness and disappointment as private as I can. And after I've had that chance to like let out that anger and frustration about my lack of achieving, then I go back to the drawing board and say, okay, now what can I learn? But it doesn't happen on the spot. Like, we're human. We have to allow ourselves to kind of grieve, or let out that energy that comes from a loss.
would you say that you learn more from the matches that you win or that you lose?
You know, honestly, I think I learned from both. Because even when you win in karate, you're not perfect. I mean, I can honestly tell you, I've never had a perfect match where everything I've done in that ring was absolutely perfect. There's nothing I could have done better. I feel like there's always room for improvement. There's always some way to analyze the situation, say, well, that was good. And I like how you figured that out. But next time, why don't you think about doing it this way? Or let's work on this specific technique that would have given you a much better advantage next time. So, yeah, I think I can learn from both situations.
Switching gears, we want to
Hmm.
transition into training and
Yeah.
specifically how you've had to train during a pandemic. So, how were you impacted by COVID-19 and what changes did you have to make in order to be successful?
Yeah. So 2020 has been a strange year for everyone. I feel like my experience was similar, but yet there were some differences for me. So in early 2020, we finalized the team for Paris. We're all very excited about competing later on in May of 2020, and of course, we all know that didn't happen. But at the same time, like, my body was feeling really sore, tired, injured. I was still recovering this ACL injury I've been dealing with and trying to rehab for at almost 2 years at that point. And I get, maybe it's given my age, I don't know, but it just was not feeling great yet. And so while I was excited to compete, I also knew that when they postponed it, that it was actually a good thing for me, that I was going to be able to give my body like that rest that it needed to kind of recenter. um, I also wanted I also wanted to prepare, not by traveling and doing competitions and such. I wanted to stay in one place and just train like the way I had back in like my early 20s, like when I was getting ready for the 2002 World Championships. Just train every day at home, a consistent schedule. And so really, like, COVID's kind of let me do that, like, I was able to take that break. I was able to train in one place consistently. Um, it's been less exciting because I haven't been able to train with a lot of partners. That's the only downfall, I'll say. You see some of your competitions and other athletes around the world, they've got their training partners that they've trained with throughout the entire pandemic. And it's kind of like, darn, I wish I had that too. But I've been fortunate enough to have some opportunities to train with people. And I think now, as we're getting closer to Paris of 2021, that I'll definitely, put all those pieces together, and I'll get to that tournament prepared and ready to go.
As you were just saying, as a kumite athlete, a huge part of your training is sparring with another
Hmm.
opponent. And you said you were able to spar a bit, but was it easy to switch gears into not having a partner to train with, or and how difficult was that? What did you have to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, being that I've been doing this sport for for so many years, like, making pivots, making changes is not that big a deal for me. I've been through it all, the training alone, the training with big groups, and everything in between. It's not ideal. I wish that I had a core group of people that I could train with consistently in person and have like be able to work on that distance and timing and everything. But on the other hand, I've been able to focus on some other things that I usually don't spend enough time on: flexibility, strength, technique, things like that. I've been able to really focus on throughout this pandemic. And I think it's actually helped me in those ways. So, as much as I'm a little disappointed by not having my training partners with me, I've been able to make the most of it.
Looking back on 2020 and all the break that you've had and the necessary recoup time, how have you seen yourself grow, not just in karate, but mentally as well?
Ooh, I mean, yeah, again, 2020 has been such a weird year of like wins and losses at the same time. It's been really tough mentally to be okay with staying at home all the time. Um, and having a very, very small circle of people to interact with. I haven't seen my parents for a year now. It's tough living up here in Chicago and my family's back in Hawaii. But on the positive side, like I've been able to cut down on commutes, had more time with my kids because I don't have to commute to work. I'm working in Zoom all the time. So there's pluses and minuses to it all. I think the net is that it's positive because it's made me resilient. It's made me focus on the things that are important. So yeah, I'm grateful for the good things that 2020 brought.
With next year's event season coming up very soon, what do the next few weeks and months look like for you? Are they more of the same? Are you going to be switching it up a bit?
Yeah, so I'm definitely ramping it up now in this training phase where it's just like a lot of high volume. But I don't have a ton of competitions per se in the near future, although that is part of the plan as we get closer to Paris, is to have a few competitions to get ready for that. But right now, it's just about like getting back in the dojo and putting in the time and getting that conditioning and body, like physical preparedness, up as much as possible.
Are you excited to get back into competitions? Are you nervous? Where's your head at with that?
No, I'm not nervous. I'm not nervous at all. Like I've been wanting to go to the Olympics since I was like 5 years old. So I'm not nervous. I'm excited. Like this is it. This is it for me. I'm gonna give this Paris as much all I got. Hopefully to the World Championships as well. And then after that, I think it's time to say goodbye. This will be my second retirement from competition. And I think this is the time to say, yep, done it all, left it all out on the line. So I'm excited.
So, speaking of that, next up, we wanted to talk about specifically the Paris Olympic qualifier and the Tokyo Olympics, which
Hmm.
again feels like they're going to be happening very soon.
Yeah.
So, to start off, let's flash back to 2016 when we first found out that karate would be included in this year's games. I know you said that you retired officially from competition back in 2010. You retired for
Hmm.
17 years. No, 7 years,
7 years.
and then you
Yeah.
returned back in 2017. Tell us about that. How did you go about making the decision that you wanted to come out of retirement?
Yeah, it was kind of a tough decision. I mean, in my heart, I made that decision instantly. As soon as it was announced, I was like, well, let do the quick math, 39 years old. Okay, I can do it. I'm still training with the kids at the dojo and the adults. So yeah, why not? But then there was a second guessing, what would people think? What would my family think? Is it silly for someone who's been out of it so long? Is it just like my athlete in my head saying I can do it, but maybe my body's not ready for it? So it took me a while to come out publicly and say to people, yes, I'm coming back to competition. But I was pleasantly surprised by the support that I got when I told people that. Lots of former teammates and people in my circle were really happy and excited to see me coming back to competition.
What was that feeling like as someone who loves karate just to see it be brought to the Olympic stage?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'd love to see karate permanently in the Olympics and in collegiate sports. I mean, I'd love to see karate everywhere because I love it so much, and I think it's such an exciting, dynamic sport. So just to have this opportunity to be in Tokyo, where karate is come from, its origins, so it's really special to have karate in the Tokyo Olympics, and to have the chance to say that I tried for that, whether I make it or not, that I had a fighting chance at it and I went for it. That's really like the icing on the cake for me. It may not be as significant as the world championships that I've already won, but I think it kind of caps it off and makes for a complete athletic experience.
Following your return to the sport, in 2018, you suffered a major sports injury, tearing your ACL in the finals match at the US Open, which is something
Mhm.
you briefly mentioned a little bit ago. But what did this event do to your Olympic dreams, and how did you come back from this injury?
Yeah, so it just happened in the last few seconds of my final match at the US Open in 2018. It was my first major injury that I had ever experienced. Luckily, I'd gone through my entire first part of my career without anything. So my first thought, I knew it had something to do with, like, it was something like an ACL. When I saw the medic doing like her test, I was like, I've seen this done to other people. I know what it is. Like, there's no way I could have collapsed on the ground like that and it's just a little sprain. Like, it's got to be something significant. And so when they did say it was ACL, I thought immediately, well, there goes my chance. It's probably going to take me a while to get back. There's no way I can play catch up. But that's all emotions. Like, then you start thinking, okay, well, don't worry. There's one path to get to the Olympics, but there's a couple other paths, and you're still 2 years, 2 full years out from that. So after just calming down and thinking of it logically, I realized that I just have to be really serious about rehab, and I'd have to just get back as soon as I possibly could. And that's exactly what I did.
Mhm. And was it a tough transition into returning back to competition, or how was the process of going through rehab?
The first part of rehab was actually pretty good. I was feeling like I was making a lot of progression. I think I may have came back too soon, too hard, but that's just like the athlete in me, just really wanting to go for it. I didn't re-injure or anything like that. I just think I wasn't quite, like, my knee just wasn't quite ready for that really high intensity training and competition. And for that reason, I think it continued to bother me longer than it should have. It went almost a full 2 years of just not really functioning the way I wanted it to. I was certainly able to compete and train, but it was always a problem with the swelling and the pain and everything. But now I'm at a point where it's feeling really good. And so I'm able to finally say, like, yep, I think at the end of the day, I made the right choices. If I could go back and tweak a couple of things, yeah, maybe I'd slow down on coming back so quickly. But I also had the opportunity to compete in the World Championships in 2018, and that was my first competition back after the injury. So it's like, do you pass that up? I don't think so. Like I would never pass that up. So yeah, so that's what ended up happening.
And circling back around to the Paris Olympic qualifier and the Tokyo Olympics, what would you say you're most hoping to accomplish? Have you set goals for yourself, and how are you going to be measuring success this year?
Right. So, I'm an athlete. I'm just like any of those other athletes out there. Like, I'm going there to win. I will not say anything otherwise. I've never been one to say I'm going to participate like any competition. I'm always there to win. That's just the competitive part of me, which I think I need, to be at this level. You need to be there to win. Um, but for me, it's like it's about focusing on Paris and Paris only. And so I rarely talk about the Olympics when I'm talking about my goals, because really it's step by step. I mean, if you asked me this, a year ago, or like before the team trials, I wouldn't even be talking about Paris. I'd say my goal is to win team trials. So I'm very focused on the next step. And so for me, for the past year, the next step has been Paris, and so that's all I'm focused on right now. If I'm able to do what I go to Paris to do, which is to get in the top three and qualify for the Olympics, then I'll be having a different conversation and telling you my goal is to win the Olympic Games. But I'm not going to skip over Paris and talk about the Olympics until I've actually done that. So for now, Paris is the goal.
What are you hoping that people who are maybe not as familiar with karate take away from the sport when they tune into the games this year?
Yeah, it's interesting because, there's so much out there in the media, in film and stuff about karate. I actually just recently did a interview with an insider about like, reviewing martial arts films and telling them, is this realistic, not realistic? So I would really love people to see what karate in real life is like, in sport, in the sport aspect of it. Because people often think like that I'm going to be, I don't know. I don't know what they think, but it's nothing like what we do. And so I'd love for them to see like just how athletic it is, how much strategy goes into it. It's a lot like chess, like, some of these other sports where it's just like a mental game. And so yeah, I'd like the world to see that.
Lastly, as of right now, karate will no longer be an Olympic sport following the games in 2021. Has this had an impact on you, your training, your dreams, and what are your thoughts about that overall?
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for the kids who are up and coming. There's so much potential, such great athletes, both here in the US and worldwide, and they're just not quite at that age yet. And they have these dreams, and yet the reality is that they probably won't get to fulfill those dreams with karate not being a continued sport in the Olympic Games. However, like I was back when I was 18 years old or as a kid, there were other options. There were world championships. Hopefully, there'll be other avenues for our karate athletes to participate in. Maybe here in the U.S. through collegiate sports, for example. There's lots of different ways that karate athletes can fulfill their dreams, and I'd like to be a part of building that for them in the future. That would be something that would bring a lot of fulfillment to me to see our sport grow for those youngsters that like just have so much potential. I want them to have a platform in which to showcase that talent.
Looking beyond the Paris Olympic qualifier, regardless of the outcome, which will hopefully end with you competing in Tokyo later this year, what
Hmm.
are your career goals moving forward? What will happen after Tokyo?
Specifically to karate.
Yes.
Yeah, specifically to karate, I'd like to finish the year out strong. Back in early 2020, my goal was to do Paris qualifier, whether or not I went to the games, and then finish off with the world championships. So um, that's what I'd like to do this year too. It's really like a repeat of last year's goals that I set out for myself.
Reflecting back on your karate career as a whole, which is a huge slew of accomplishments, what would you consider to be your biggest accomplishment that has meant the most to you?
Um, I mean, I'll always be really proud of my double gold at the World Championships. I'll be really proud that I was the first and still am the only female American to be a world champion. I would love that I'm not the last, just like Kamala Harris says, Um, but um, but I'm also really proud of the fact that I came back when it seemed like a stupid idea, that there probably were a lot of naysayers that didn't open their mouth and didn't say anything publicly, but in their mind were like, why is she doing that? She's old. So I'm proud of myself for taking that challenge and going for it, and actually so far succeeding. I've competed against a lot of young athletes in my category and still showing that I'm the strongest female athlete in the US here. So I'm proud of that.
Can you name something that you've learned through karate and your training that you take with you off of the mat?
Hmm. Yeah, for me, it's like resilience, just like that grit, but like no, like just having a goal and just sticking with it. I think that's something that I apply in my career. What I've done through my life as an adult is just like having that grit and just like not worrying what other people think, and not letting them deter me from my goal, and sticking to that.
Lastly, what would your advice be to younger karate athletes who are maybe just getting started with the sport?
Um, my advice to younger athletes would be to uh, don't skip over the hard work, embrace the hard work. The hard work is fun. That pain you feel is fun. And that's all going to pay off in the end, because if you put in the hard work now, it's just going to be fun later on. You're going to be able to do, you know, uh, moves and techniques and stuff that you would not have been able to do if you didn't have that really strong fundamental base. So, when your sensei says you need to do the basics, things like that, you should listen. There's a lot of knowledge in that, and wisdom, in that. Glossing over that and just going to the fancy stuff, it usually doesn't pay off. It usually fizzles out in the end. So stick to the fundamentals, get all that down really well, and that's going to build a really strong base that you're going to thank yourself for later.
And lastly, before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to share with everyone, either about yourself, about karate, or just any shout outs that you want to do?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would love to give a shout out to everyone who supported me throughout my entire karate career, but specifically in the past like year, 2 years, because of the pandemic and all the challenges that we've faced. My coach Dries Elmanani, the people I train with over here locally, Brian Martell and his crew. And then some other local athletes here that I train with. I really appreciate uh, all their support, and it's been fun, and I'm excited to finish off the year strong.
Well, thank you, Elisa, for joining us today. Those are all the
Thank
questions I
you.
have for you. Good luck in 2021, and we're so
Thank
excited to see
you.
what you accomplish.
Thanks a lot.